5 bullets. That is exactly how much lead I pulled out of a man's chest in a supply closet while a gun was pressed to my head. I didn't know his name. I didn't know he was the most dangerous man in the city. All I knew was that if his heart stopped, mine would too. I saved him. I did the impossible. And what did I get for my heroics? Fired, disgraced, thrown out of the only hospital that would hire me. I thought my life was over as I packed my bags in the rain. But I was wrong. Because 24 hours later, a black SUV pulled up to my crumbling apartment, and the man I saved wasn't just awake, he was looking for me. And he didn't want to say thank you. He wanted to give me the world, whether I wanted it or not. The rain over Chicago wasn't just falling, it was punishing the city. It hammered against the glass doors of the emergency room at Mercy General, drowning out the distant wail of sirens. For Chloe Evans, it was the end of a 14-hour shift. Her feet throbbed in her worn-out sneakers, and the coffee in her hand had gone cold 2 hours ago. She wasn't a surgeon. Not anymore. Not since the funding for her residency was cut, and she was forced to take a nursing position to pay for her mother's care facility. She was overqualified, overworked, and invisible. Chloe, bed 4 needs a catheter change, Dr. Sterling barked without looking up from his clipboard. He was the head of trauma, a man who cared more about insurance premiums than heartbeats. And stop loitering by the pharmacy. I was checking the inventory, Dr. Sterling. We're low on epinephrine, Chloe replied, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. Not your job, he dismissed her, walking away. Chloe sighed, pushing a stray lock of brown hair behind her ear. She turned to head toward the break room, just for a moment of silence. She took the service hallway, the one that led to the loading docks. It was a shortcut she wasn't supposed to use, but at 3:10 a.m. she didn't care. She pushed open the heavy steel door to the back corridor and froze. The loading bay doors were open, letting the storm rage inside. Thunder cracked, shaking the floorboards, but it wasn't the thunder that made Chloe's blood run cold. 3 men in dark suits were dragging a 4th man across the wet concrete. There was blood. So much blood. It trailed behind them like a crimson carpet. "We need a room, now!" one of the men shouted. He was huge, with a scar running through his eyebrow. He spotted Chloe and didn't hesitate. He pulled a suppressed pistol from his jacket and aimed it directly at her forehead. "Not a sound," he hissed. "Open that door." He pointed to the supply closet, a room barely big enough for a gurney and shelves of gauze. "He needs an OR," Chloe stammered, her hands trembling as she held them up. "Look at him. He's hit in the chest. If I don't get him to trauma, no trauma unit, no police, no paper trails," the man with the gun growled. "You fix him here, or you die here." They shoved the wounded man onto a metal prep table used for sorting boxes. The man groaned, his head lolling back. Under the flickering fluorescent light, Chloe saw his face for the first time. He was striking, even in the grip of death. Sharp jawline, dark hair plastered to his forehead by rain and sweat, and a tattoo of a black wolf encircling his wrist. Declan Kincaid. Chloe stopped breathing. Everyone in Chicago knew the name. He wasn't just the mob. He was the king of the underworld, the man who owned the docks, the unions, and half the politicians. And he was currently bleeding out on a table meant for sorting latex gloves. "He has 5 entry wounds," Chloe said, her training overriding her fear. She ripped his shirt open, buttons scattering across the floor. 2 in the shoulder, 2 in the abdomen, 1 near the pericardium. If that one touched the heart sac, he's dead already. "Fix him," the gunman ordered, cocking the weapon. "I need tools, scalpels, forceps, suction. I can't do this with a first aid kit." "Then go get them. You have 60 seconds." Chloe ran. She didn't run to the police. She ran to the nearby crash cart in the hallway, grabbing handfuls of sterilized packs, lidocaine, and clamps. She rushed back inside, kicking the door shut. For the next 2 hours, the world shrank down to the circle of light above Declan Kincaid's chest. "Hold this," she ordered the gunman, treating him like a junior nurse. The fear had vanished, replaced by the cold, hard focus of a surgeon. "Apply pressure here. Don't let go." Without anesthesia, Declan groaned, his eyes snapping open. They were a terrifying shade of icy blue, dilated with pain. He looked at the ceiling, then at her. He didn't scream. He didn't beg. He just watched her. "Easy," Chloe whispered, her hands covered in his blood. "I have to dig deep for the last one. Stay with me." His hand shot out, gripping her wrist with bruising force. "Don't let me die. I'm not authorized to let you die," she muttered, pouring alcohol over the wound. She worked with a precision that Dr. Sterling could only dream of. She clamped arteries, stitched torn muscle, and finally, with a sickening clink, dropped the 5th bullet into a metal kidney dish. "He's stable," Chloe breathed, slumping against the shelving unit. Her scrubs were ruined. Her hands were shaking violently now that the adrenaline was fading. "He needs fluids, antibiotics, a real hospital bed." "We're leaving," the gunman said. He signaled the other guard. "You can't move him," Chloe protested. "He'll tear the sutures." "We were never here." The gunman looked at her, his eyes hard. He reached into his pocket. Chloe flinched, expecting a bullet. Instead, he pulled out a thick stack of $100 bills, smeared with blood, and tossed them onto her chest. "For your silence." They lifted Declan. The mob boss looked at her one last time before he passed out again. His lips moved, forming a silent word. Chloe. He had read her name tag. And then they were gone. Vanished into the rainy night, leaving Chloe alone in a supply closet that looked like a slaughterhouse. The sun rose over Chicago with a mocking brightness. The storm had passed, leaving the streets clean, but Chloe felt permanently stained. She had spent the last 3 hours scrubbing the supply closet with bleach she stole from the janitorial cart. She had hidden the bloody gauze in the biohazard bins of 3 different floors. She had changed into a spare set of scrubs. She thought she was safe. At 7 a.m., just as she was clocking out, the hospital intercom crackled. "Nurse Evans, report to administration immediately. Nurse Evans to administration." Chloe's stomach dropped to her shoes. She walked the long, sterile hallway, like a prisoner walking to the gallows. When she opened the door to the office, it wasn't just Dr. Sterling waiting for her. It was the hospital administrator, Mrs. Gable, and the head of security. "Sit down, Miss Evans," Mrs. Gable said coldly. Dr. Sterling wouldn't even look at her. He was staring out the window, his arms crossed. "We reviewed the security footage from the loading dock corridor," Mrs. Gable said, sliding a tablet across the desk. It showed Chloe entering the hallway. It showed the 3 men. It showed her running back and forth with equipment. I was held at hostage," Chloe whispered. "They had a gun." "And yet," the head of security interjected, "you didn't trigger the silent alarm. You didn't call the police when you went to the crash cart. You returned to the room. You performed unauthorized surgery on hospital grounds, stealing thousands of dollars in medical supplies." "I saved a man's life." Chloe stood up, her voice rising. "He was dying. I took an oath." "You aided and abetted a known criminal," Dr. Sterling finally spoke, turning around with a sneer. "Do you know who that was? That was Declan Kincaid. The police are already asking questions about a shooting downtown. If they find out we treated him here, this hospital loses its funding. We lose our license. So you're firing me for saving a patient? We are firing you for gross misconduct, theft of hospital property, and endangering staff," Mrs. Gable said, stamping a form. "You are terminated effective immediately. We will be reporting this to the nursing board. You won't work in this state again." "Get her out of here," Sterling muttered. 2 security guards escorted Chloe to her locker. They watched her pack her bag, her stethoscope, a picture of her mother, and a spare sweater. They walked her to the front doors and shoved her out onto the sidewalk. It was 8 a.m. Chloe stood on the curb, the city rushing past her. She had $42 in her bank account. Her rent was due on Tuesday. Her mother's care facility cost $3,000 a month. She walked. She walked for hours until her feet blistered. She ended up at her tiny, drafty apartment in the crumbling side of town, collapsing onto her sofa. She stared at the ceiling. "It's over. I have nothing." She cried until she fell asleep, still wearing her scrubs. The sound of an engine woke her, a deep, powerful rumble that vibrated the floorboards of her second-story walk-up. Chloe sat up, confused. It was dusk. The room was bathed in orange light. She walked to the window and peeked through the blinds. Her breath hitched. The entire street was blocked off. 4 matte black SUVs were parked in a phalanx formation directly in front of her building. Men in dark suits, the same build as the ones from the hospital, were standing on the sidewalk, scanning the rooftops. "Oh God," Chloe whispered. "They're here to kill me. I saw too much." She grabbed her phone to call 911, but before she could dial, a knock hammered on her door. It wasn't a polite knock. It was a command. "Miss Evans, open the door." She looked around for a weapon. A kitchen knife? A lamp? The lock clicked. They had a key. Of course they had a key. The door swung open. Standing there wasn't the gunman from the night before. It was a man in an immaculate Italian suit, holding a tablet. He looked like a lawyer, but his eyes were cold as ice. This was Enzo, Declan's right hand. "Pack a bag," Enzo said calmly. I won't tell anyone," Chloe stammered, backing up against the kitchen counter. "I didn't tell the police. I got fired because I didn't tell them. Please, just leave me alone." Enzo stepped into the apartment, looking around at the peeling paint and the water stains on the ceiling with mild disgust. "Mr. Kincaid does not like owing debts," Enzo said. "And he certainly does not like the woman who saved his life living in a place like this." "What?" "You removed 5 bullets from him. You saved him when the best surgeons in the city would have let him die on the table to avoid the paperwork. Mr. Kincaid is awake, and he is very insistent on seeing you. I'm not going with you." Enzo snapped his fingers. 2 men entered behind him. They weren't holding guns. They were holding Louis Vuitton luggage trunks. They began packing her things, her clothes, her books, her toiletries, with rapid efficiency. "You don't have a job, Miss Evans. We checked. You are blacklisted from every hospital in Illinois. Your landlord is preparing an eviction notice for next week. You have nothing holding you here." Enzo walked up to her and held out a hand. "Come with us, or stay here and starve. It is your choice. But the boss hates to be kept waiting." Chloe looked at her empty apartment. She looked at the eviction notice on the counter she hadn't opened yet. She thought about the arrogant look on Dr. Sterling's face when he fired her. She straightened her spine. She had faced death last night. She could face Declan Kincaid again. "Fine," she said, grabbing her coat. "But if he bleeds on me again, I'm charging double." Enzo actually smiled, a terrifying, thin smile. "I think you and the boss are going to get along just fine." They escorted her down to the lead SUV. The neighbors were watching from behind curtains, terrified. Enzo opened the back door for her. The interior smelled of expensive leather and faint cigar smoke. Chloe slid inside. The convoy moved out, cutting through the traffic like a shark through water. They didn't head toward the warehouses or the shady part of town. They drove straight toward the Gold Coast, the wealthiest district in Chicago. They pulled up to the gates of a massive estate that looked more like a fortress than a home. High stone walls, cameras everywhere, and guards patrolling with assault rifles. The car stopped in front of the main entrance. The doors opened. Chloe stepped out, her sneakers looking ridiculous against the marble driveway. "Up the stairs, second door on the left," Enzo directed. "He is waiting." Chloe walked up the grand staircase, alone. Her heart was hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She reached the double mahogany doors and pushed them open. The room was a master suite, larger than her entire apartment. A fire crackled in the hearth, and there, sitting in a velvet armchair by the window, was Declan Kincaid. He was bandaged, wearing a black silk robe that hung loosely over his chest. He looked pale, but the intensity in his eyes was undimmed. He was watching her as she entered, tracking her every movement like a predator. "You're late," Declan said, his voice a deep rasp that sent a shiver down Chloe's spine. "I didn't know I had an appointment," Chloe shot back, crossing her arms to hide her trembling hands. Declan smirked. He picked up a file from the table next to him and tossed it onto the floor at her feet. "That is the deed to this house. Well, the guest house. It's yours." "I don't want your house," Chloe said. "And that," Declan pointed to a second piece of paper, "is a confirmation of a wire transfer. $1 million for the surgery." Chloe's mouth went dry. I can't accept that. It's blood money." Declan stood up. He winced slightly, clutching his side, but he forced himself upright. He walked toward her, towering over her small frame. He smelled of antiseptic and expensive cologne. He stopped inches from her, leaning down so his lips were close to her ear. "You lost your job because of me, Chloe. You lost your reputation. The world turned its back on you for doing the right thing." He pulled back to look her in the eyes. "You belong to me now, not as a prisoner, but as my personal physician. You will live here. You will be protected. And anyone who ever disrespected you—" Declan's eyes darkened, the blue turning to storm grey. "I will burn their world to the ground, starting with Dr. Sterling." The guest house Declan had promised was a lie. It was a sprawling, modern villa, separated from the main mansion by a manicured garden of black roses and high stone walls. It was beautiful, sterile, and terrifyingly silent. Chloe stood in the center of the living room, clutching the strap of her battered duffel bag. The space was furnished with white leather sofas and glass tables, furniture that looked like it had never been touched. On the kitchen island, a brand-new iPhone sat next to a set of keys. She didn't touch them. She walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows. Outside, 2 men in dark suits stood by the gate, their backs to her. They were guards, or wardens. "I need to leave," she whispered to the empty room. "I need to get my cat. I need to pay my electric bill." As if the house was listening, the front door beeped and unlocked. Enzo walked in, carrying a plastic pet carrier in one hand and a cardboard box in the other. "Muffin is fine," Enzo said, setting the carrier down. A ginger tabby cat meowed indignantly from inside. "And your electric bill has been paid, along with your rent for the next year, though you won't be returning to that apartment." Chloe rushed to the carrier, letting the cat out. Muffin immediately hissed at Enzo and ran under the sofa. "You broke into my apartment again?" Chloe asked, standing up, her anger flaring over her fear. "We secured your assets," Enzo corrected, placing the cardboard box on the table. It was full of her clothes, but on top lay a white coat, a doctor's coat. It had her name embroidered on the pocket, Dr. Chloe Evans. "I'm not a doctor," she said, her voice shaking. "I'm a nurse. I never finished my residency. Mr. Kincaid disagrees, Enzo replied smoothly. In this house, your word is law regarding medical matters. Speaking of which, the boss is refusing his antibiotics. Chloe's eyes widened. He what? He has 5 fresh gunshot wounds. He's at high risk for sepsis. He says the pills make him groggy. He has a meeting with the capos in an hour. He threw the bottle at the maid. Enzo checked his watch, looking bored but with a hint of tension in his jaw. If he gets an infection, that is on you. No, Chloe snapped, grabbing her stethoscope from her bag. That is on him for being an idiot. Take me to him. The walk back to the main house was chilly. The estate was a fortress. Cameras swiveled to follow them. When they reached the master suite, the atmosphere was heavy. Declan was sitting up in bed, surrounded by papers and 3 other men who looked like they chewed glass for breakfast. His face was pale, a sheen of sweat on his forehead, but he was barking orders into a phone. I don't care what the Rossi family says. If they move shipment through the south side, we burn the trucks. End of discussion. He hung up and looked at Chloe. The intense blue eyes were glassy. He was burning up. Out! Chloe ordered the men standing around the bed. The men didn't move. They looked at Declan. I said out! Chloe shouted, her nurse voice cutting through the testosterone in the room. Unless you want him to die of septic shock in front of you, get out. Declan blinked, surprised by her volume. He waved a hand weakly. The men shuffled out, leaving Enzo by the door. You're loud for someone so small, Declan grunted, leaning back against the pillows. He winced, clutching his side. And you're stupid for someone so powerful, Chloe retorted. She didn't ask for permission. She walked to the bedside table, grabbed the thermometer, and shoved it into his ear. 103.2, she read the display. Your body is fighting a massive trauma, and you're trying to run a criminal empire. You need the antibiotics. IV drip. Now. No needles, Declan growled. I hate needles. You have bullets holes in you, but you're afraid of a catheter? Chloe let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. She opened her medical bag, the one Enzo had stocked with high-end supplies. I'm not asking, Declan. You saved me from the street. Fine. Now I'm saving you from your own stubbornness. She prepped the IV line with efficient, angry movements. Declan watched her. The heat radiating off him was alarming. Why do you care? He murmured, his voice losing its edge as the fever took hold. You should let me die. You'd be free. Chloe paused, the needle hovering over the vein in his hand. She looked at him. Really looked at him. Beneath the tattoos and the violence, she saw the same look she'd seen in soldiers and victims of car crashes. Fear masked as aggression. I don't let patients die, she said softly. Not even the bad ones. She inserted the IV. He didn't flinch. For the next 6 hours, Chloe waged a war against the infection. She didn't sleep. She sat in the armchair next to his bed, monitoring his vitals, changing cold compresses on his forehead, and physically forcing him to drink water when he woke up delirious. Around 3 a.m., the fever broke. Chloe was dozing in the chair when she felt a hand on her arm. She jumped, instinctively reaching for a scalpel that wasn't there. Declan was awake. His color was better. The glassy look was gone, replaced by a sharp, calculating focus. He was looking at her hand, which was resting on the bedsheet near his. You stayed, he said. It wasn't a question. It was a discovery. My shift isn't over, Chloe mumbled, rubbing her eyes. How is the pain? Manageable. He sat up slowly, the sheet falling to his waist. His chest was a roadmap of scars and fresh bandages. Enzo told me what you said to the men. You have fire, Chloe. I have common sense. Tell me, Declan asked, his voice low in the quiet room. Why did they fire you? Really? Chloe looked away, staring at the embers in the fireplace. Dr. Sterling needed a scapegoat. He's been skimming narcotics from the inventory for months. I found out a week ago. I think he was waiting for a reason to get rid of me. Saving a criminal gave him the perfect excuse to silence me and discredit me at the same time. The air in the room changed. It grew colder, heavier. Declan swung his legs out of bed. "What are you doing?" Chloe stood up to stop him. "You need to rest." "I have rested enough," Declan said. He stood, swaying slightly, then steadied himself on her shoulder. His hand was heavy and warm. "Sterling didn't just fire you. He tried to destroy you to cover his own sins." Declan walked to the wardrobe and pulled out a fresh shirt. "Go to the guest house. Get dressed," he commanded. "Wear something impressive." "Why? Where are we going at 4 a.m.? Declan turned to her, and the smile on his face was terrifying. It was the smile of a wolf who had just found the scent of blood. "We're going to a board meeting." The morning sun was just hitting the glass facade of Mercy General Hospital when the convoy arrived. This wasn't a stealth mission. This was an invasion. 3 black Escalades pulled up to the main entrance, blocking the ambulance bay. Security guards rushed out, shouting, but they froze when the doors opened. Declan Kincaid stepped out. He was wearing a charcoal 3-piece suit that cost more than the security guard's annual salary. He wore dark sunglasses to hide the fatigue in his eyes, but his posture was rigid, powered by sheer will and painkillers. He held his hand out. Chloe stepped out of the car. She wasn't wearing scrubs. Enzo had provided a stylist at 5 a.m. She wore a tailored navy pencil dress, sharp heels, and her hair was pulled back in a severe, elegant bun. She looked powerful. She felt nauseous. "Head up," Declan whispered to her as he took her arm. "You are not a nurse today. You are the woman who holds the leash." They walked through the sliding doors. The reception area went silent. Nurses stopped mid-sentence. A janitor leaned on his mop, mouth open. They recognized Chloe, the disgraced nurse who had been escorted out yesterday, but they also recognized the man holding her arm. "Mr. Kincaid, you can't be in here." A brave security supervisor stepped forward. Enzo stepped in front of the guard, holding up a hand. "Mr. Kincaid is here for the 8 a.m. Board of Directors meeting. He is a concerned investor." "He's not on the list." "He is the list," Enzo said, shoving past him. They took the elevator to the top floor. Chloe's heart was pounding so hard she thought it would bruise her ribs. "Declan, this is crazy," she hissed. "They'll call the police." "The police work for the mayor," Declan said calmly, watching the numbers climb. "And the mayor owes me a favor for making his gambling debts disappear last Christmas. Relax, Chloe. Watch the show." The elevator dinged. They walked down the plush carpeted hallway to the mahogany double doors of the boardroom. Inside, Mrs. Gable, Dr. Sterling, and 6 other board members were seated around a long table, drinking coffee and discussing budget cuts. The doors banged open. Dr. Sterling dropped his coffee cup. It shattered, brown liquid splashing onto his expensive loafers. "Who do you think you—" Mrs. Gable started, standing up. Her face went pale when she saw Declan. Then it went ghost white when she saw Chloe. "Good morning," Declan said, his voice booming in the acoustic space. He walked to the head of the table. The chairman, an old man named Mr. Henderson, scrambled out of his chair as if it were on fire. Declan sat down. He gestured for Chloe to sit on his right. Enzo stood behind them, arms crossed. "This is a private meeting," Sterling stammered, though his voice lacked its usual arrogance. He was looking at Declan's chest, knowing exactly where the bullets had been. "I'm aware," Declan said. "I'm here to discuss the hospital's financial situation. Specifically, the pending acquisition of the new MRI wing. We don't have the funding for that, Mrs. Gable said nervously. No, you don't. Because Dr. Sterling here has been funneling the budget into an offshore account in the Caymans to pay for his addiction to high-stakes poker. Silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. Sterling stood up, his face red. That is a lie. This is slander. I fired this woman for incompetence, and now she brings a thug to threaten me? Declan didn't yell. He didn't even stand up. He just slid a manila folder across the table. Mrs. Gable opened it. Her hands shook as she flipped through the pages. Bank transfers, photos of Sterling exchanging pills for cash, time stamps. And, Declan continued, regarding Miss Evans, you claimed she violated protocol. But according to the hospital bylaws, Section 4, Paragraph 2, emergency triage performed to save a life when no other surgeon is available is protected under the Good Samaritan clause. You fired her illegally. Declan leaned forward, taking off his sunglasses. His ice-blue eyes bore into Sterling. I just bought the debt for this building, Doctor. The bank signed the papers an hour ago. I am your landlord. I am your creditor. And I am your boss. He pointed a finger at Sterling. You're fired. Get out of my hospital. Sterling looked around the room. The other board members were staring at the floor, terrified. No one moved to help him. You can't do this, Sterling hissed. Do you know who I know? Do you know who protects me? I know the Rossi family uses this hospital to clean their money, Declan said softly, dropping a bombshell that made the air leave the room. And I know you're their point man. Tell Luca Rossi that Mercy General is under new management, Kincaid management. Sterling's face twisted into a mask of pure hate. He grabbed his briefcase. As he passed Chloe, he leaned in. You think you won? He whispered. You just painted a target on your back, darling. The Rossis don't forgive. Enzo stepped forward, but Sterling was already storming out. Declan turned to the stunned board members. Ms. Evans is now the head of trauma surgery. She will finish her residency requirements under an expedited program, which you will approve today. Anyone who has a problem with that can resign. He looked at Mrs. Gable. Do we have a problem? No, Mr. Kincaid, she squeaked. Welcome back, Dr. Evans. Chloe sat there, stunned. She looked at Declan. He wasn't looking at her. He was looking at the door Sterling had just exited, his jaw tight. He was in pain. Meeting adjourned, Declan announced. He stood up, but his knees buckled. Chloe caught him before he hit the floor, sliding her arm around his waist. We need to go, she whispered. You're pushing it. They made their way back to the elevator. The adrenaline was fading, and Declan was leaning on her heavily. Did you mean it? Chloe asked as the elevator descended. About the job? I don't joke about business, Declan gritted out. You're the best doctor in this building. Now you have the badge to prove it. They walked out into the cool morning air. The security guards were now holding the doors open for them respectfully. Thank you, Chloe said softly. Don't thank me yet, Declan muttered, scanning the parking lot. Sterling's threat. He wasn't bluffing. They reached the lead SUV. Enzo opened the door. Crack. The sound was like a whip snapping. The side mirror of the SUV shattered. Get down, Declan roared. He didn't dive for cover. He threw his body over Chloe, tackling her onto the asphalt behind the engine block of the SUV. Ping. Ping. Thud. Bullets sparked off the pavement and punched into the metal of the car. Screams erupted from the hospital entrance. Contact left! Roof of the parking garage! Enzo shouted, pulling a submachine gun from under his jacket. The other Kincaid guards returned fire, a deafening cacophony of automatic gunfire in the middle of a hospital driveway. Chloe was pressed against the rough ground, the smell of oil and burnt rubber filling her nose. Declan was a heavy weight on top of her. She felt something warm dripping onto her neck. "Declan!" she screamed. "You're bleeding!" He lifted his head. He wasn't looking at his wounds. He was looking at her, his eyes wild and fierce. He pulled a handgun from his waistband. "Stay down, Chloe," he commanded. Dr. Sterling just made his resignation official. He rolled off her, rose to a crouch, and fired 3 precise shots toward the parking garage. The war had started, and Chloe was right in the center of the kill zone. The black SUV screeched out of the hospital driveway on 2 wheels, leaving a trail of shattered glass and smoke behind them. Enzo was driving like a man possessed, swerving through oncoming traffic to lose the tail. In the back seat, the situation was critical. "Pressure! Apply pressure!" Chloe screamed, her hands pressing down on Declan's shoulder. The new bullet had grazed his neck and lodged in the trapezius muscle. It wasn't fatal, but he was bleeding heavily, his blood soaking into the pristine leather seats and Chloe's new dress. "I'm fine," Declan gritted out, though his face was grey. He was trying to reload his handgun with trembling fingers. "You are not fine. You just tore your stitches and took a new round." Chloe snatched the gun from him and threw it on the floorboard. "Stop being a soldier for 5 seconds and be a patient. We can't go back to the estate," Enzo shouted from the front. "They know the route. They'll have a blockade set up at the bridge." "Take us to the safe house in Wicker Park," Declan ordered, his voice straining. "The industrial loft. No one knows about it except the inner circle." Enzo nodded and yanked the wheel hard to the right, drifting into an alleyway. 20 minutes later, they were in a freight elevator, rising to the top floor of an old textile factory. The loft was sparse. Brick walls, a single leather couch, and a medical supply cache that looked like it hadn't been touched in years. They laid Declan on the couch. Chloe immediately went into trauma mode. She ripped the expensive suit jacket off him, exposing the damage. "I need whiskey, a lighter, and those forceps," she ordered Enzo. "No anesthesia?" Enzo asked, wincing as he looked at the wound. "We don't have time," Chloe said, her eyes locked on Declan's. "Do you trust me?" Declan looked up at her. The pain was blinding, but his gaze was steady. "With my life." Chloe worked fast. She poured the alcohol over the wound. Declan hissed but didn't scream, and dug for the bullet. It was raw, brutal medicine. When the metal slug clinked into the glass bowl, Declan let out a breath that was half groan, half growl. "You're good," he whispered, his hand finding hers. "Better than the butchers I pay a fortune to." "Shut up and rest," Chloe said softly, bandaging him with clean gauze. Her hands were shaking, now that the crisis was paused. She sat on the floor beside the couch, leaning her head back against the cushions. For an hour, silence filled the loft. It was intimate, the kind of quiet that only exists between 2 people who have survived death together. Chloe watched the rise and fall of his chest, realizing with a start that she wasn't just worried about her patient. She was worried about him. "Why did they attack?" Chloe asked quietly. "Sterling is a weasel, but he's not a killer. He doesn't have the guts to hire a hit squad." "Sterling didn't hire them," Declan said, his eyes closed. "He went to Luca Rossi. The Rossis have been trying to take the North Side territory for a decade. Sterling gave them the perfect opening. He told them I was weak, that I was recovering." Enzo walked in from the other room, his face pale. He was holding a burner phone. "Boss," Enzo said, his voice low, "we have a problem." "What is it?" "I checked the security logs for the estate to see how the shooters knew we were leaving the hospital at that exact moment." Enzo swallowed hard. "Someone disabled the GPS jammer on the SUV from the inside before we left the garage." Declan sat up, ignoring the pain. "Who had access to the car?" Enzo looked at the floor, then at Declan. "Only 3 people, Me, you, and Marco. Marco. Declan's driver for 6 years, the man who picked up his dry cleaning, the man who drove his mother to church. "Where is Marco now?" Declan asked. His voice was terrifyingly calm. "He disappeared during the firefight at the hospital," Enzo said. "But I tracked his phone. He's at the warehouse district, at the Rossi meat-packing plant." Declan stood up. He swayed, and Chloe grabbed his arm. "No," she said. "You are not going there. You've lost a pint of blood." "Marco sold me out," Declan snarled, pulling away from her. "He sold us out. He almost got you killed, Chloe. I don't let that slide. You're in no condition to fight." "I don't need to fight," Declan said, walking to a hidden wall panel and sliding it open to reveal an arsenal of weapons. He grabbed an assault rifle. "I need to execute." "Then I'm coming with you," Chloe said. Declan froze. He turned to look at her. "Absolutely not. You stay here. I am the only one who can keep you upright if you pass out," Chloe argued, grabbing her medical bag. "And besides, Sterling is going to be there, isn't he? If Marco is with the Rossis, Sterling is with them too." She walked up to him, her chin high. "He ruined my life. He fired me. I want to see him fall." Declan looked at her with a mixture of awe and fear. He touched her cheek with a rough thumb. "If you come," he whispered, "there is no going back to your normal life, Chloe. Once you step into that warehouse, you are part of the family. You are part of the war." Chloe placed her hand over his. "My normal life ended the moment I pulled 5 bullets out of you." The Rossi meatpacking plant was a rusted hulk of iron and brick on the edge of the river. It smelled of old blood and freezing water. Declan, Enzo, and 4 loyal enforcers who had met them en route approached the side entrance. Chloe stayed tight behind Declan. She wasn't carrying a gun. She was carrying a syringe filled with a sedative powerful enough to drop a rhino. "Enzo, take the catwalks," Declan whispered. "I'm going through the front door." "That's suicide," Enzo hissed. "No, that's a distraction." Declan kicked the metal doors open. Inside, the warehouse was lit by hanging industrial bulbs. In the center of the floor, surrounded by hanging hooks, stood Luca Rossi, a fat, balding man in a silk suit. Behind him was Marco, looking terrified, and Dr. Sterling, who looked triumphant. "Declan!" Luca boomed, spreading his arms. "I heard you were dead, or at least crippled." "You heard wrong." Declan walked forward, his rifle lowered but ready. "And you bought a lemon, Luca." "My driver? Really? He couldn't even parallel park, let alone set up a hit." Marco flinched. "Boss, I'm sorry. They threatened my sister." "Save it," Declan said coldly. "And you brought the nurse." Sterling laughed, stepping forward. He looked manic. "The little hero. Did you bring her to patch you up after we finish the job?" "I brought her," Declan said, "to watch you die." Luca Rossi snapped his fingers. 10 men stepped out from the shadows, guns raised. "It's over, Kincaid. Hand over the territory, and I'll make it quick." Declan didn't move, but Chloe did. She stepped out from behind Declan's large frame. She didn't look at the guns. She looked directly at Luca Rossi. She squinted, tilting her head. "You're dying, aren't you?" Chloe said clearly. Her voice echoed in the silent warehouse. Luca frowned. "What did you say, girl?" "The tremor in your left hand," Chloe pointed. "The slight yellowing of the sclera in your eyes, and the way you're favoring your right leg. Liver failure." "No, it's the kidneys. End-stage renal failure. You're on dialysis, aren't you?" Luca went rigid. It was a secret he kept guarded with his life. Weakness was death in the Mafia. "How?" Luca stammered. "I'm a doctor," Chloe said, walking forward. The gunman looked confused. "And looking at your skin tone, You haven't been taking your binders. You have maybe 3 months, unless you get a transplant." She stopped 10 feet from the mob boss. "Dr. Sterling didn't tell you?" Chloe glanced at Sterling. "He's the head of trauma. He has access to the organ donor list. He could have bumped you to the top months ago." Luca slowly turned his head to look at Sterling. "Is this true?" Sterling began to sweat. "Luca, don't listen to her. She's lying. The list is federal. I can't—" "He sold my kidney on the black market last year," Chloe lied smoothly. It was a gamble, but she knew Sterling's greed. "He sells organs from John Doe's. He could have saved you. Instead, he took your money and let you rot." The air in the room shifted. The loyalty of the Rossi men wavered. Their boss was dying, and the doctor beside him had held out on the cure. "You piece of filth," Luca whispered. He grabbed Sterling by the throat. "No! Luca! She's playing you!" Sterling screamed. "Declan," Chloe said calmly, "make the deal." Declan understood immediately. He lowered his rifle. "I can get you the best transplant surgeon in the country," Declan said to Luca. "Chloe here will oversee your recovery personally. You live. You keep your territory. But Sterling is mine. And the rat is mine." Luca looked at Declan, then at Chloe, then at the terrified doctor in his grip. He shoved Sterling toward Declan. "Deal!" Sterling scrambled up, trying to run. "No, you can't!" Declan raised his pistol. He didn't hesitate. One shot. Dr. Sterling fell, his reign of terror over, before he hit the concrete. Marco, the traitorous driver, fell to his knees, sobbing. "Boss, please." "Enzo," Declan said, turning his back. "Handle the trash." As Enzo dragged Marco away, Declan walked to Chloe. He dropped the rifle and wrapped his arms around her, burying his face in her hair. She could feel him shaking, not from fear, but from the sheer exhaustion of holding it together. "You," Declan whispered into her ear, "are the most dangerous woman I have ever met." "I told you," Chloe replied, hugging him back, careful of his wounds. "I'm a doctor. I know where all the weak points are." 3 months later, the charity gala for Mercy General Hospital was the event of the season. Champagne flowed, diamonds sparkled, and the city's elite mingled under the crystal chandeliers of the grand ballroom. Dr. Chloe Evans stood at the podium, adjusting the microphone. She wore a stunning emerald green gown that hugged her frame, a stark contrast to the scrubs she had worn for the last 48 hours. "And so," Chloe addressed the crowd, "with the new funding provided by the Kincaid Foundation, our trauma center is now the most advanced in the Midwest. We will save lives that 3 months ago would have been lost." The crowd applauded politely. In the front row, Mrs. Gable clapped the loudest, terrified of stopping. Chloe stepped down from the stage. She moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations, but her eyes were scanning the room. She was looking for only one person. She found him on the balcony, away from the noise. Declan was leaning against the stone railing, smoking a cigar. He looked devastating in a tuxedo, the scars underneath hidden from the world. He watched her approach, his eyes softening. "You gave a good speech," he said, flicking ash over the edge. "I hate speeches," Chloe sighed, leaning next to him. "I'd rather be in the OR." "I know. That's why I doubled your salary." Chloe laughed. It was a light, happy sound. Her life had changed irrevocably. She was no longer just a nurse struggling to pay bills. She was the director of surgery. Her mother was in the best private care facility in the state, and she was the girlfriend of the most powerful man in Chicago. It wasn't a normal relationship. There were nights Declan came home covered in blood. There were days she had to patch up his men in the kitchen of the guest house. There were bodyguards who followed her to the grocery store. But there was also this, the quiet moments on the balcony, the way he looked at her like she was the only light in his dark world. "I have something for you," Declan said. He reached into his pocket. Chloe's breath hitched. "Declan, if that's a ring, I'm going to throw it off the balcony. We've been dating for 3 months. Declan smirked. "It's not a ring." He pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a silver pin. It was a wolf, intricately carved, with small sapphires for eyes. "This is the Kincaid crest," he said seriously. "Only blood wears this. My mother wore one. My grandmother wore one." He pinned it to the strap of her dress. His fingers brushed her collarbone, sending a jolt of electricity through her. "This tells the world that you are under my protection," Declan said. "That anyone who touches you, touches me. That you are the Luna of this city." "I thought I was just the doctor," Chloe teased, touching the cool metal of the wolf. "You saved my life, Chloe. Twice," Declan said, his voice dropping to a rough whisper. He pulled her close, his hand resting on the small of her back. "You saved my soul. I was a dead man, walking until you opened me up and restarted my heart." "You're cheesy," she whispered, leaning up to kiss him. "I'm in love," he corrected. They kissed under the moonlight, the sounds of the party fading away. Below them, the city of Chicago twinkled, a city of crime, corruption, and chaos. But up here, in the arms of the Wolf King, Chloe felt safe. She had lost her job, lost her reputation, and nearly lost her life. But she had found her destiny. "Ready to go home?" Declan asked, pulling away. "Enzo is waiting with the car." "Not yet," Chloe said, looking back at the hospital shining in the distance. "I have a 6 a.m. shift, and I think Mrs. Gable is trying to steal the shrimp from the buffet. I should probably stop her." Declan threw his head back and laughed, a true, deep laugh that echoed in the night. "God, I love you," he said. "I know," Chloe smiled. "Now, come on. Let's go shake down the mayor for a pediatric wing donation." She took his hand, the surgeon and the mobster, and led him back into the light. And that is the story of how Chloe Evans went from a fired nurse to the Queen of Chicago. What an incredible journey. I love how she used her medical knowledge to outsmart the rival boss in the warehouse, brains over bullets every time. If you enjoyed this story, please give this video a huge thumbs up. It really helps the channel. And tell me in the comments, would you have saved Declan in that supply closet? Or would you have run for the police? I want to know what you would do. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell icon so you never miss a new story. We have a crazy new romance drama coming next week involving a billionaire and a secret baby. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.